Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the hard data behind some of the most rapid, genuinely unprecedented political shifts happening in the UK right now. We're going to be looking really closely at recent polling numbers, some pretty dramatic political maneuvering, and the highly publicized rhetorical strategies that are making headlines everywhere. So if you want to really understand the mechanics of what the media is calling a major political realignment, grab a notepad and let's get right into it.
Okay, I want you to look at this absolutely explosive number, 27%. In the context of modern British politics, seeing a number like this attached to a relatively new political entity is honestly nothing short of an earthquake. This 27%, that is Reform UK's current predicted vote share for the June 2026 general election. And that's according to the latest predictive polling models from Electoral Calculus. Just to put that into perspective for a second, for a party outside the traditional two-party system to reach these kinds of heights in the forecasts, well, it suggests a really fundamental shift in voter behavior and party loyalty.
And this chart really brilliantly illustrates exactly what that 27% looks like when you stack it up against the establishment. Drawn directly from that Electoral Calculus June 2026 prediction model, you can see Reform UK sitting there at a commanding 27%, while the traditional major parties are trailing pretty far behind. Labour sitting at 18.8%, and the Conservatives are right there with them at 18.3%. And look, this isn't just some wild outlier either. Support for this massive political realignment is completely mirrored in recent YouGov polling too, which actually shows Reform hitting 25% and firmly overtaking those traditional major parties in their voter intention tracking. So we're literally looking at a scenario where a challenger party is mathematically projected to leapfrog the historical establishment.
All right, moving right along to Section 1, the UK CPAC headline.
So what's really fascinating here is the friction we're seeing highlighted within conservative political circles. According to reports from The Guardian, Nigel Farage actually initially faced what they described as an apparent snub from the upcoming UK CPAC conference. Now, this is a very prominent conservative gathering being organized by former Prime Minister Liz Truss, and it's such an interesting data point, right? Because it shows that despite those surging poll numbers we literally just looked at, there was initial hesitance or outright resistance from certain established conservative factions to give Farage a platform at this specific event. It really highlights this very real tension between the traditional party wings and this surging populist movement.
But as we all know, politics moves incredibly fast, because the headline quote now reads, Nigel Farage to headline Liz Truss's UK CPAC conference. Talk about a rapid, almost dizzying turnaround. Despite that initial reported snub, Farage's undeniable momentum in the polls, that 25 to 27% we were talking about, has effectively cemented his position. He's not just attending anymore, he has literally been elevated to the official headliner for the entire event. This is just a clear illustration of how sheer polling gravity and political momentum can force realignments and reconciliations. It brings a challenger directly to the center stage of the very event that, reportedly, tried to keep him at arm's length.
Which brings us to Section 2, Rhetoric. Pure cold rage.
This specific phrase right here, pure cold rage, which is currently echoing all over the media, this isn't just some throwaway comment. This is the intense, highly polarizing rhetoric that Farage is actively deploying right now to galvanize his support base. Reports from The Guardian really emphasize that the Reform UK leader is tapping into a very specific, deeply visceral public sentiment regarding current events. So by mirroring and vocalizing this pure cold rage, he's aiming straight at voters who feel entirely disillusioned with the standard, measured responses of the traditional political establishment. It's a really high-stakes strategy of building an intense emotional connection.
However, that high-stakes strategy naturally prompts a pretty critical question from political analysts. Could this pure cold rage rhetoric actually end up damaging his brand? Now, we're just posing the media's own question here to keep our analysis strictly objective. The Guardian explicitly asked if crossing a red line with this level of intense, aggressive rhetoric might backfire. And the calculation going on here is incredibly delicate. I mean, sure, while it undoubtedly energizes a highly motivated core of supporters, does it risk alienating moderate voters? Can a party capture the mainstream and actually win those projected seats if their primary rhetorical tool is perceived as too extreme? It's a massive tightrope walk between galvanizing a base and hitting a hard ceiling of support.
Let's look at Section 3, the working class strategy.
To try and broaden that coalition, Reform UK is aggressively targeting a brand new demographic base, and it's leading to a direct political collision. On the one hand, you have reports from GB News detailing Farage's deliberate strategy to extend an olive branch to what he calls the patriotic working class. He is making a very direct play for traditional working class voters.
But neutrally contrasting this, on the other side, we see blunt pushback from organized labor. The Guardian reports that trade unions have firmly rebuffed Farage, actively accusing the Reform Party of essentially just cosplaying as workers' champions. This whole dynamic perfectly encapsulates the current battleground. Reform UK is trying to peel away working-class voters from their traditional political homes, while the established unions are fighting fiercely to completely discredit that appeal.
And finally, Section 4, reshaping the political map.
So let's just concisely summarize the 4 key pillars we've covered in today's explainer. First, the hard data. We're seeing massive poll surges, right? With electoral calculus predicting 27% and YouGov showing 25%, placing Reform UK well ahead of the traditional giants. Second, the political reality is matching that data, with Farage overcoming an apparent snub to be elevated to the UK CPAC headliner. Third, the mechanics of this surge. There's a heavy media focus on his use of that pure, cold rage rhetoric to tap into voter dissatisfaction. And fourth, the expansion strategy. A highly strategic but fiercely contested outreach to patriotic working-class voters. All 4 of these pillars combine to create the literal mechanics of Reform UK's current political phenomenon.
Which really just leaves us with this final, overarching question to ponder. How will this rapidly shifting political realignment ultimately test the traditional UK party system? I mean, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the strategies, and we've certainly seen the establishment pushback. If a challenger party can consistently hold a quarter of the electorate through intense rhetoric and demographic pivoting, the very foundation of how British elections are fought and won might literally be changing before our eyes. I really hope this explainer helps structure and clarify the hard data behind the headlines for you today. Thank you so much for joining me to dive into this genuinely fascinating topic, and as always, keep questioning the data.